Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have my buddy Marc here with me today. He's an affordable housing provider that's rehabbed over 500 houses and does a lot of new build construction too for affordable housing. We're going to be talking about affordable housing today. Professional real estate investors know that it's not really about the real estate. In fact, real estate is just a vehicle to freedom. A group of over 100 of the nation's leading real estate investors from across the country meet several times a year at the Investor Fuel Real Estate Mastermind to share ideas on how to strengthen each other's businesses, but also to come together as friends and build more fulfilling lives for all of those around us. On today's show, we're going to continue our conversation of fueling our businesses and fueling our lives. I'm glad you're here. Hey, Marc, welcome to the show, buddy. How are you?
Hey, Mike, I appreciate that. How are you?
Good, good. So glad to have you here. Looking forward to talking about this. You're just up the road here. I'm in Dallas. You're up the road a little bit in Tulsa. By Texas measurements, that's just up the road. So we can say that. What are you, about 4 hours away? 3.5, 4 hours?
About 4 hours.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's 3.5 hours to Dallas and about another hour to get into Dallas.
Yeah, it depends on where you're going, like in Dallas. That's right. So let's talk. Tell me a little bit about your background. I mean, you've been in real estate for a long time. You've done a lot of things. Tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got to where you are today.
So, short version, I started wholesaling houses about 18 years ago. Got into full construction, doing flipping about 15 years ago. I'm a flipper by trade. And as we did so well with flipping that I created tax problems. So I started getting into rentals. And as we did the rentals and I started doing numbers, we shifted towards affordable housing, lower income, entry level stuff, because bigger isn't always better.
Right. Yeah. And now you're doing some new build stuff, which we'll kind of get into that, I guess, in a little bit. So we talked a lot up front, and I know you focus a lot on kind of entry level stuff, affordable housing, first time home buyer stuff, not necessarily move up stuff, not big stuff. So why is your focus specifically on kind of entry level, I guess, affordable housing?
Well, in the beginning, so the biggest reason is audience. I have a larger pool of people to buy my product. When we're doing flipping, I noticed that when we're in that low hundreds, 100.5, that they would sell as soon as we put them on the market. As we evolved, I thought that your higher end stuff, you make more money, it's more exciting, and it turns out that it's when you're above 250. You have a different clientele. People with that kind of money, they're more particular, they're more sophisticated, they've done this before, and they have the money to do what they want. So they don't necessarily care about what you've done to the house or the remodel, the work that you put in. So we didn't sell them as fast. And as a result, we held on to money. It didn't turn as fast, and it turned out to not be worth the effort. So our model, we based on volume, more or less. I mean, we get in, we get out, and we make our return, and we go. We also, when I started doing rentals, the more expensive the house, the higher the debt service. The higher the debt service, the higher the risk. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I like to be, warm and fuzzy. When I have lower income houses, I mean, if it goes vacant, I don't have as much of a mortgage payment to cover, so it's less stressful.
Yeah, and obviously with entry level houses, the rent per value of the house is just better at the entry level than it is. Say you're trying to rent out $1 million house. Obviously, those typically don't cash flow. The ratio of kind of value to rent just isn't as good as it is on entry level stuff.
No, and like if you look at like a suburban house, $200,000-$300,000 house. I mean, you're lucky to debt service at a rent ratio of the 1% rule.
Yeah.
Or you have a debt service of 1.2. I mean, you make just enough to cover the bills, and you're depending upon appreciation and depreciation. You're not really making any cash flow. I look at the the smaller houses, like if we're at the 100,000 price point or even under, my rent ratio is almost to 2. I mean 2.5. I mean a lot of my houses and my North Tulsa houses, you look at, I'm in them for less than $100,000, typically closer to $70,000. My mortgage is average 3.5. Taxes, insurance, $100. So my hard cost on that house monthly is $450. My average rent is $850, $900. So I'm double the income.
Yeah.
Of what my expenses are.
Yeah.
So that was appealing to me. I followed the money in. I followed the numbers in.
Yeah. And I think for us as entrepreneurs, like when you start to reach a certain level of success as a real estate investor and entrepreneur, sometimes we lose touch a little bit with the fact that honestly, the average American, something like 70% of Americans have less than $1,000 in their savings account or something like that, right? They have very little safety net there. And so to be able to provide, nice housing, because you're building a lot of this stuff now at the entry level point of the market is in high demand, just because, everybody can afford that. And I think you said it up front. It's like, if you're the McDonald's of housing and you can't eat at Outback Steakhouse anymore, or, anywhere else, like you can only go, if you're kind of at the low end, you can't go any lower. That's the nicest properties you're going to get and the lowest price points.
Well, and I have this joke. I mean, I'm a bottom feeder, and I'm very okay with it. I like full remodels. I don't like maintenance, so I actually go for the dirty, the nasty, the ugliest house on the block. And when you're in the suburbs, those houses aren't great. But when you're in a like low income Section 8 area, those houses are bad. And when you go in and you transform that house from being, literally inhabitable to the nicest house on the block, you're making a difference in the neighborhood. Yeah. But our mission became very simple, as we believe everyone should have a nice place to live, and we want the places that we work to be better for us having been there.
Yeah, that's great. Let's talk a little bit about the model, and I know you can control that a little bit more with when you're building them, right? And so I know you transitioned a while back from rehab to rent to more of a build to rent model. And I think some of that is over the past few years has been constrained inventory, right? Probably a little bit of that too, but also you just had more control over the quality and the maintenance and stuff like that. So kind of compare those models, build to rent versus rehab to rent.
So the rehab to rent, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we could walk down the street and buy houses. Literally people were just tossing them at us. It was no issue. But as the market got crazy the last few years, and and surprisingly, inventory shortages, it just became so competitive, and people were paying what I consider stupid money for stuff, and I just refused to do that. So, in my career, I've always identified trends, and I don't like to do what's popular. I make my money doing what other people don't want to do. So when full gut remodels got popular, I moved to North Tulsa and we started doing affordable housing. Once inventory dried up on the south side, people started moving into the low income areas. So, and my model, we always did full gut remodels, and we did that for two reasons. One, it was easier to find them and get them cheap. Two, I don't like maintenance. If you try to run maintenance out of cash flow, you're starved. It just you'll eat up your monthly profits just real quick. Yeah. So we go in and we would replace everything. We do take it to the studs, rewire, replumb, HVAC, roof, windows, siding. New house. So the evolution to build to rent was actually pretty simple, because when it became harder to buy, no one was buying lots. So we could go buy lots for a few $1,000s, and then we figured out how to build a house on it. Now, building a house is a whole different animal. There is the permitting process, the procedures, the inspections, the requirements, the insurance requirements. For doing almost the same job, the expectations on the contractor are dramatically higher, and you have to get certified at this point. It's like it's crazy how difficult the government, the city, the county makes it to build a new house versus a remodel. And I've also figured out if you buy an existing project, you leave one wall standing, it's a remodel. But you get into the permitting process, and you get into the city government and the politics behind it makes it more cumbersome. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's literally a brand new product. We don't have to worry about what's behind the wall because we put the wall there. So we have little to no maintenance. You have no capital expenditures, and we figured out, because we started off doing the BRRRR. I would buy them, remodel them, rent them, refinance them. But I owned a construction company, so we got to the point that we were remodeling them faster than we could refi them. So we started selling turnkey as a necessity. Well, we made so much money selling turnkey that we turned to the build-to-rent model. So there's people like new houses,
right?
And this is people like to live in new houses, and investors like to own new houses because there's a sense of security there. There's a lot less concerns of what could go wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and likely stay longer, and although they have more retention and all that stuff too, I'm sure. When it's a nicer house, and if it's in an area with a lot of older houses and you have a newer house, like people are more likely to stay because they don't want to have to move out into an older house.
Right, and then we doing affordable housing, we learned a few tricks. Like when you use like voucher systems, Section 8, welfare, those kind of things. They base the rent based off of bedroom count, how many people you can fit into the house. So everything's 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, because I maximize our rents.
Yeah, that's right. You can control that a little bit more. So let's talk a little bit about the impact that interest rates are having on you, because I know when you're in the rental business and if you're bringing more on, obviously rates impact us because your properties typically don't cash flow as much. So talk a little about how the impact that's having on you, and what are you doing to kind of combat that?
So, the first impact is the houses we're selling. Over the last couple of years, we know that material costs have skyrocketed. Building costs have went up probably 45%. It's crazy. Fortunately, with the increase in material costs, we had the shortage of inventory, so we had increase on values. So our values matched our cost increase, so we were okay. What I was not prepared for was the interest rate increase, because that priced out most of our buyers. When your house goes from 180 to 220, that's not a huge jump on the value side, but it's a pretty significant jump on the debt service side. And then you add 2 points, 3% interest. The interest is nearly doubled. The money was almost free for a long time.
Yeah.
So people were stretching out, and this counts on both the entry level, the first-time home buyers who were buying more house than they could afford, and then also impacts the smaller investor who's squeezing every dime out of a deal they can, and they over leverage themselves. So you have less people who are able to buy, so we have to figure out how to make our product cheaper.
Yeah. And
in our case, we started building smaller houses. We started targeting those lower numbers. We had to find a way to keep those houses under 200,000 to make the rent, the debt service make sense.
Yeah, and I've seen in the Dallas market here, I've seen ads and stuff, or usually on the outskirts, more outside of town, where there's some of the builders are building like way smaller houses just for the same reasons, right? They have to find a way. So they're more affordable because they're on the outskirts, and they're more affordable because they're going back to like some of the ones I've seen are like 1,600 square foot houses, which I think for the past several years, like builders just weren't building smaller houses like that anymore. I'm
Well,
talking about the large builders too, right?
well, and when you think about it, you spend the majority of your money in bathroom, kitchens, your plumbing, your electrical, your heat and air. Those are things that, a few hundred square feet don't change a lot. So it economically, when you're building, on a per square foot basis, it's cheaper to build a bigger house. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at a total value, I mean, we had no choice but to bring it down. And, the only way we could do it was to chop off a bedroom, shave 300 feet off. I mean, and it saved us $25,000 on our build cost, which saves $25,000 on our sales price.
Right.
Because, we do quite a bit of volume. I mean, we on average, we're building 5 to 10 houses a month. We have a fairly sizable operation. Between the new construction and the remodels, we have at least a dozen projects going at any given time.
Yeah. So in the vein of affordable housing, I know you also own some mobile home parks and stuff like that. Let's talk about kind of mobile home parks versus traditional houses from an investor standpoint.
So mobile home parks, I like large returns. When I joined the cash flow group, when I'm looking at multifamily properties and I'm looking at a 6 cap, 5 cap, these crazy numbers to me. In my mind, I come from affordable housing where if it's not, if it's less than 15% return, I don't want it. It's not worth my time. So they're trying to convince me to go buy something at a 7 cap. I'm like, I just don't understand. So mobile home parks is the multifamily solution to low income, more or less, because we're able to get, 16, 18 caps. I bought my first mobile home park a year ago, and we bought it at a 16.5 cap.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's simple. Money, returns. I like double-digit returns. I don't want, I'm not, I don't know. I like the value add. The other part of the multifamily or the mobile home parks is it's faster than buying one at a time, because there's only so many houses you can buy at once, which is why I was drawn into multifamily, because we've been doing houses for 18 years. So it's just, you can't buy them fast enough at some point. So we looked, and I like mobile home parks also because they're very easy. When I say easy, there's most of them, what our model is we go in and we look for the mom and pop, the operator type mobile home parks that are not maximized, that are not run like a business, and we come in and we pull some easy levers. I like the ones that have a half empty park, because I can go get new trailers, bring them in, rent them, and I mean, you want to talk about quickly increasing income. Dramatic value add just by pulling a small lever.
Yeah.
And it's not a lot of work. I mean, just go find some trailers, bring them in, rent, hook them up and rent them. And then there's other options. You go in and going into remodeling trailers is less appealing. We've done several remodels on trailers, and it's much like remodeling a house on a smaller scale. Unfortunately, it's not much cheaper. It's more cost effective just to go buy a trailer and put it in place.
Yeah.
And
for your mobile home parks, are they in the Tulsa area as well? Your mobile home parks, are they in the Tulsa area?
We have one in Okmulgee, which is about 45 minutes south on the way to Dallas.
Okay.
And then the other one's just on the east side of Oklahoma City.
Okay.
Just off I-40. So they're both they're both about an hour, 45 minutes and an hour and a half.
Yeah. One of the things I had somebody on my Flip Nerd podcast like years ago, it was a mobile home investor, and they really blew my mind when they told me that, and I did my research on it too. It's true that something like 10% of homes in America are mobile homes. Like I just blew my mind that it was that high, but I guess when you see a park, they're super they're super condensed. Like there's a lot of homes there. And then of course there's tons of rural areas and around lakes and stuff like that with tons of mobile homes. And so it was just crazy that when they said that, I was like, that can't be true. But in fact, I think it is.
Well, and if you look, especially in Oklahoma, Texas, this part of the country, there's a lot of them. They're all over the place. I mean, they blend in very well. You don't, if you're not looking for them, you don't notice half of them.
Right.
Now, and the other thing that like was appealing with mobile home parks, you look at multifamily, you look at your apartments. Your average tenant turnover, they stay 1, maybe 2 years if you're lucky. And even with the housing, we found that most people stay between 1 and 3 years on average. Mobile home parks, most tenants stay 13 years is the average.
Wow.
You have a lot less turnover.
Yeah. Because where else are you going to go? I mean,
where else are you going to go?
Unless you go upstream, but you're not going to go downstream, I guess.
Right. Well, and there are some nicer mobile home communities, and that's what we look for as we go in and we make them, a better place to live. Like everything else, we believe, this mobile home fits so well with what we do because it allows us to give people nice places to live, affordable housing options that they wouldn't otherwise have. And then also with the mobile home parks, we have options. We have, we can rent them, but we do a lot of rent to own in mobile home parks. In fact, I have one park because I'm always curious on what makes things tick. And I'm very big on education. I mean, I've done, when I'm into something, I learn as much as I can. So I have the Okmulgee Park is pure rental. I have 100% control of the park. The Harrod Park is rent to own. Everything is on a lease option. So I have no maintenance. And there's pros and cons to both. And we're going to have to kind of tally here at the end of the year to see which one is actually more profitable. But they each come with a different set of challenges, but you have more options. I like the rent to own model because it gives people an option to live the American dream of home ownership that they probably wouldn't otherwise have. I mean, granted, I mean, it's a trailer on a little park in a little lot, but it's their lot. Right. People take pride in that.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it is also their property, so I just can't go on there and clean it and mow it and throw the trash away like I do in Okmulgee. So right. Trailer trash is a real thing, man.
Yeah. Mark, so you've been an investor for a long time now, and you're a member of Investor Fuel, our cash flow group, which is our multifamily group. And would you mind just sharing a little testimonial of what it's like to been around for a long time? You're kind of an old dog. You know a lot in the industry, and just the value you've gotten out of being a part of Investor Fuel.
So we joined Investor Fuel 18 months ago. It was spring of 21. I like Investor Fuel for several reasons. One of the biggest is, so I'm here in Tulsa, and there's not a lot of people who play on the level that we do, so I don't have a large peer group, so to speak. And in Tulsa, I am definitely the big fish in the small pond, and I enjoy that. Don't get me wrong, but it's not challenging. You don't have a lot of stimulating conversations and relationships, and you don't have those people who force you to level up. So my favorite thing about Investor Fuel is when we get together, it's all about the contribution and helping each other and kind of raising each other. So I go into a room where I'm no longer the biggest fish, and it forces me A, out of my comfort zone, B, also I'm a student again, because I don't know everything. I think I do, but I don't. And I realize that there are people doing a lot more than what I do. But here in my local market, I don't see that. So it's nice to have people to relate to.
Yeah.
Now, also, working with Corey, I mean, the reason that we shifted from, North Tulsa houses to mobile home parks, because we want the multifamily. I come from the single family world. And, you know, the biggest difference and the biggest thing I've learned in Investor Fuel is, you know, single family is a single individual sport, so to speak. You know, I can go and work. I can do a lot of things. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. Multifamily, and the mobile home parks included, is a team effort. It takes a group of resources. No one person can do it. And I tried. Trust me, I've tried, because I don't play well with others. So it becomes a much more of a team environment, a team sport. It's like you're not going to win a football game by yourself. I don't care how good you can throw that damn ball. So the connections, the relationships, the level up. I mean, I guess, you know, every time I come to the meeting, I learn something that makes me money, saves me money, or increases my game.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's what it's about, right? Is I think most people in our group are heavy hitters in their market, and then when they come together, you know, first off, two things. One is it gets you out of your comfort zone, because you're hopefully you're not the biggest person in the room. If you are, then the room isn't right for you. And two, even if you are a good sized operator, one little bitty nugget that kind of comes out of nowhere that you didn't even expect, you weren't even there looking for, could have a dramatic impact on your business. Just like you hear one little thing and you're like, wait, what? I never even thought of that. It was right in front of my face. But if I put that in my business, that's going to save me $50,000 a year or more, or help me make another $100,000 a year, whatever it might be.
Well, and you know that, and the biggest thing that I've taken is actually time, in saying no and eliminating a lot of the things, you know, simplifying my life. You know, like the $1 million meeting a couple of weeks ago. I mean, that was my number one thing, is I got to simplify, man. I'm involved with too much.
Yeah.
Not that I'm not going to do them. I just got to find ways of me doing less.
Right. Yep. Awesome, man. Well, Mark, if folks wanted to connect with you somehow, whether they're in the Tulsa area or anywhere else, where can they go to learn more about you or how to connect with you?
Facebook's the easiest way. You can follow me at Marc Ruiz, Ruiz. Also, Tulsa REIA, REIA. I don't have a website. I'm not on any other social platforms. I try to hide. I try to blend in as much as possible.
I don't, but some days I want to. I need to hide more, so I'm trying to do more. I've actually, my wife and I joke that I've become more introverted over time, and that seems odd for somebody that hosts a podcast and does big events and all that. But I'm like, I think it's because every time I open my mouth, I get new tasks. So I'm trying to talk less, because I don't need more to do.
Yeah, no, I try to blend in. But it definitely. It's amazing how when people figure out what you do, like I still get messages every day. Like, I want to take you to lunch. I want to pick your brain. And like, you know, I wish I had time. I just don't.
Right.
It's like, but at the same time, for, you know, what we do, especially with the multifamily and the syndications, like, I have to put myself out there. This was why I'm on the podcast, because this isn't part of my comfort zone. I've only done a handful of these ever.
Yeah.
It's counterintuitive for me, but I have to get comfortable raising my game, which is, you know, why we're here.
Yeah. Well, you did great. So, Mark, thanks for sharing your story with us today and some of your insights. Really appreciate it, buddy.
I think, Mike.
Yep. And guys, we'll add some links down below for you can connect to Mark if you want to and learn more about Investor Fuel. By the way, if you haven't talked to us about Investor Fuel, we'd love to talk to you. Our next meeting is actually coming up here. At this point, we're just a little over a month out, so we'd love to talk to you about come and do the next Investor Fuel and see if it's a fit for you. Until the next show, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you guys soon. Are you an active real estate investor? If so, and you want to latch on to the power of surrounding yourself with over 100 of the nation's leading real estate investors, all committed to building stronger businesses and living richer, fuller lives, you should jump on a call with us to learn more about Investor Fuel. Simply visit investorfuel.com to get started.